If you're waiting for a clear signal that an economic crash is coming, history shows you'll miss it. The real signs appear when things still look normal. The idea of a 2026 economic crash sounds dramatic, but history shows that large economic downturns rarely arrive without warning. They don't appear suddenly out of nowhere. They form slowly, quietly, and then seem obvious only in hindsight. What makes this period different is not just the scale of the risks, but how normalized instability has become. Inflation, debt, asset bubbles, and global uncertainty are no longer seen as emergencies. They're treated as background noise. That is often the most dangerous phase of any economic cycle. To understand why 2026 is being discussed as a potential turning point, we first need to understand how economic systems actually break. Economies don't collapse because people panic. They collapse because imbalances grow for too long without being corrected. When those imbalances finally collide, the adjustment is sudden and painful. One of the most important imbalances today is debt. Global debt levels, government, corporate, and household, are higher than at any point in modern history. Debt itself is not evil. In healthy systems, debt is productive. It funds growth, innovation, and long-term investment. The problem begins when debt grows faster than the income needed to service it. At that point, the system becomes fragile. Governments across the world have relied heavily on borrowing to maintain stability, fund social programs, and respond to crises. This worked in the short term, especially during emergencies, but it created long-term pressure. When debt grows faster than economic output, governments face difficult choices: raise taxes, cut spending, inflate the currency, or borrow even more. None of these options are painless. At the same time, consumers have increasingly relied on credit to maintain living standards. Rising costs of housing, food, healthcare, and education have outpaced wage growth. To fill the gap, households turn to credit cards, personal loans, and buy now pay later systems. This keeps consumption alive, but it also creates vulnerability. When incomes are interrupted or interest rates rise, this debt quickly becomes unmanageable. Interest rates are a critical piece of the 2026 discussion. After years of extremely low rates, central banks raised them aggressively to fight inflation. Higher rates slow inflation, but they also expose weaknesses. Businesses that survived only because money was cheap begin to fail. Households with variable rate debt feel immediate pressure. Governments face rising costs to service their own borrowing. This creates a lag effect. The full consequences of rate increases are not felt immediately. They often take 1 to 3 years to fully move through the system. That means decisions made today can trigger problems that peak years later. This delayed impact is one reason analysts focus on the mid-2020s as a potential stress point. Another major factor is asset valuation. Over the past decade, asset prices, stocks, real estate, and speculative investments, have risen far faster than underlying economic productivity. This was driven partly by low interest rates and easy liquidity. When money is cheap, investors take more risk, and asset prices inflate. The danger appears when expectations detach from reality. If asset prices assume continuous growth, but real incomes stagnate, something must eventually correct. That correction can come through falling prices, reduced demand, or prolonged stagnation. None of these feel like a crash at first, but they weaken confidence and liquidity over time. Confidence is a fragile but powerful force in economics. As long as people believe the system will hold, they behave in ways that keep it functioning. When confidence erodes, behavior changes. Spending slows. Investment pauses. Hiring freezes. These shifts can happen quietly, without headlines, but they accumulate. Global factors also matter. The world economy is more interconnected than ever. Supply chains, energy markets, currencies, and geopolitics interact in complex ways. Disruptions in one region ripple quickly across others. Trade tensions, regional conflicts, and resource constraints add layers of uncertainty that make systems less resilient. Technology adds another dimension. Automation and artificial intelligence are transforming labor markets. While technology creates opportunity, it also creates displacement. Job security becomes less predictable. Workers are expected to adapt faster, often without institutional support. This increases anxiety and reduces long-term planning, which feeds back into economic instability. So what would a 2026 economic crash actually look like? Contrary to popular imagination, it may not look like a sudden stock market collapse or a single dramatic event. It could appear as a series of pressures: slower growth, persistent inflation in essentials, falling asset prices, and rising unemployment in specific sectors. For many people, it would feel like life becoming harder even though nothing official has collapsed. In such periods, the middle class tends to feel the most pressure. The wealthy have buffers and diversified assets. The poor often receive targeted assistance. The middle class relies heavily on stable income and manageable expenses. When both are disrupted simultaneously, stress accumulates quickly. It's important to emphasize that discussing a potential crash is not about predicting exact dates or spreading fear. Economic forecasting is inherently uncertain. The goal is not prediction, but preparation. History rewards those who understand risk and position themselves thoughtfully, not those who panic or deny reality. So what can individuals realistically do in the face of a potential 2026 downturn? The first step is reframing expectations. Stability no longer means permanent security. It means resilience. The ability to absorb shocks, adapt, and recover matters more than avoiding disruption entirely. One of the most practical actions is managing debt carefully. Not all debt is bad, but high-interest, short-term, or lifestyle-driven debt creates vulnerability. Reducing dependency on debt where possible increases flexibility. This is not about extreme austerity, but about restoring control. Building liquidity is another critical principle. Liquidity means having access to resources when conditions change. This can include emergency savings, flexible income streams, or assets that can be converted without major loss. Liquidity buys time, and time is one of the most valuable resources during uncertainty. Income flexibility is equally important. Relying on a single source of income increases risk. This does not mean everyone must start a business, but developing transferable skills, side income, or multiple professional options reduces dependence on any one system. Flexibility is often more valuable than raw income level. Spending habits deserve honest evaluation. Lifestyle inflation quietly locks people into fragile structures. Every fixed expense reduces adaptability. Maintaining a margin between income and obligations creates breathing room. This margin doesn't have to be large to be meaningful. Psychological preparation matters as much as financial preparation. Periods of economic stress amplify fear, comparison, and misinformation. Staying grounded, informed, and patient helps avoid reactive decisions. Many of the worst financial outcomes come not from the crisis itself, but from emotional responses to it. It's also crucial to distinguish between noise and signal. Headlines often exaggerate short-term movements while missing long-term trends. Understanding basic economic R. For investors, caution does not mean paralysis. Historically, periods of economic stress also create opportunity. Asset prices adjust. New businesses emerge. Innovation accelerates. The key is patience and discipline. Overextending or chasing trends increases risk, while thoughtful positioning preserves optionality. On a broader level, communities and institutions will also adapt. Economic systems evolve through stress. While transitions are painful, they also reset incentives and structures. The goal for individuals is not to fight the system, but to understand how it moves and avoid standing in its weakest points. It's worth remembering that every generation experiences its own version of economic disruption. What feels unprecedented often has historical parallels. The details change, but the patterns repeat: excess, correction, adaptation, and renewal. Those who survive and progress are rarely the most confident, but the most prepared. The idea of a 2026 economic crash should not lead to fear or withdrawal. It should encourage awareness. Awareness creates choice. Choice creates resilience. And resilience allows people to move through uncertainty without losing direction. No one can control the global economy. But everyone can control their exposure, their behavior, and their mindset. In uncertain times, those factors matter more than predictions. The future does not belong to those who assume stability will return automatically. It belongs to those who prepare for change while remaining calm enough to recognize opportunity when it appears. Whether 2026 brings a sharp crash, a slow downturn, or a prolonged adjustment, the underlying lesson is the same. Systems change. Those who adapt intentionally will not only survive the transition, but emerge stronger on the other side.